Welcome to the deep dive. That long-running question of Catalan independence from Spain. Well, it's still very much alive.
It certainly is.
But today, we're aiming for something current. We've gathered quite a bit of recent material, election results, fresh polling data, some sharp political analysis, even the relevant constitutional bits to really get a handle on where things stand right now.
Exactly. This deep dive isn't about ancient history. It's about giving you a clear snapshot as of, say, April 2025. We want to unpack the shifts, the legal challenges that persist, how alliances are changing, what the world thinks, and maybe where it's all heading.
Okay, perfect. So let's jump right in. First off, political mood, the signals from voters. Feels like there's been a real shakeup there.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the biggest headline from our sources is probably the May 2024 Catalan regional election. It's the first time since, what, 2012?
Yeah, 2012.
Right, the first time since 2012 that the pro-independence parties didn't get a majority in the Catalan parliament. Oh, that's huge.
It really is a significant marker. Can you break down the numbers for us? How did it actually play out?
Sure. So the Catalan Socialist Party, the PSE, led by Salvador Illa, they came out on top, got about 28% of the vote, which translated to 42 seats.
Okay.
But the key thing is all the pro-independence parties combined only managed 59 seats, and you need 68 for that majority. So they fell quite short.
Right. And that loss of the majority is the critical point here. So what's the interpretation? Why did this happen now?
Well, the analysis we've seen points towards a kind of growing weariness, maybe, a sense of, disillusionment with the whole separatist project for some voters,
A desire for something else?
possibly a desire for more stability, more focus on, let's say, day-to-day governance. After years of tension and deadlock, maybe people are prioritizing things like the economy, social issues over the independence push. Some sources definitely hint at fatigue with the political limbo.
That makes sense. Practical concerns may be starting to outweigh the big constitutional question for some. And it's not just the election results pointing this way, is it? The opinion polls seem to show a similar trend.
Absolutely. Recent polling indicates around 51% of Catalans actually oppose independence now.
51% against.
Yeah, with about 41% in favor and
Yeah.
maybe 8% still on the fence. And what's really striking is that this is a switch from previous years when, support for independence was often slightly ahead, or at least neck and neck.
So a measurable shift in public opinion, too.
It really underlines that the dynamics are changing, yes.
Okay, so we have the election results, the polling,
Yeah,
showing this potential cooling off. But then you always come back to the fundamental legal structure, the Spanish Constitution. And it's pretty clear on this, right?
it is very clear. The 1978 Constitution talks about the indissoluble unity of the Spanish nation. That's the bedrock.
And that means?
Well, it basically means any attempt to unilaterally declare independence is seen as illegal under Spanish law, full stop.
And we saw that collide head-on with the 2017 referendum attempt.
We did. That 2017 vote is probably the most dramatic example. Spain's constitutional court ruled it unconstitutional, nullified the whole thing. It really throws the legal hurdles into sharp relief.
So those hurdles remain very, very high. Given that reality, what about trying different routes? There was that proposal for another referendum in 2024, wasn't there, using a different article?
Yes, that was Catalan President Per Aragonés. He proposed using Article 92 of the Constitution.
And that allows for.
It allows for referendums on political decisions of particular importance. So the thinking, presumably, was to try and frame it in a way that might, just might, fit within the existing legal structure, a sort of constitutional workaround attempt.
But the Spanish government wasn't buying it.
Not at all. They rejected it pretty much immediately, called it political maneuvering, especially with Catalan elections on the horizon then. Not seen as a serious legal pathway.
Okay, so unilateral moves are legally blocked, and even attempts at, let's say, constitutionally creative solutions haven't flown. That naturally leads us to look at how alliances are shifting the broader political chess game.
Yeah, and this is where it gets quite complex, quite nuanced, because you've had some really big moves from the central government in Madrid recently.
Like the pardons.
Exactly. Pardoning the separatist leaders jailed after 2017, and, maybe even more consequentially, abolishing the crime of sedition altogether. These weren't small gestures.
No, definitely not. And how have those moves played out in Catalonia politically?
Well, one interesting effect is with the Junts party, that's one of the main pro-independence parties. They're now kind of reassessing their support for the Spanish central government.
Making it conditional.
Pretty much. They're saying their continued cooperation depends on how the amnesty law related to the pardons and sedition changes is actually applied by the courts. So it adds this layer of fragility to the national government's support base.
Interesting. And back within Catalonia itself, that victory for the socialists, the PSC, in 2024, that must signal a shift in priorities there, too.
It certainly suggests that. I mean, the success of a party that doesn't push for independence points towards perhaps a desire for a more moderate path within Catalonia.
A path focused elsewhere.
Yeah, the analysis suggests it could open the door to pursuing, quote, increased autonomy within Spain, with more focus on bread and butter economic and social issues,
Yeah.
rather than fighting the constitutional battle constantly. I mean, pragmatism is gaining ground.
So it's less about a complete break, potentially, and more about getting a better deal within Spain. More powers, more control.
That seems to be a likely direction of travel right now, based on the sources. The focus could shift towards negotiating things like fiscal arrangements, maybe more, say, over cultural policy, perhaps some legal areas, but all while staying part of Spain.
Okay. And zooming out a bit, how does the wider world see this? What's the international take on Catalan independence?
Internationally, the position hasn't really budged much. The European Union and really most global players, they consistently back Spain's territorial integrity. That's a pretty standard position in international law.
Sticking with the status quo.
Pretty much. Recognizing existing state borders.
And specifically the EU, if Catalonia did somehow become independent, what have they said about membership?
EU officials have been quite explicit. An independent Catalonia would be a new country in their eyes, meaning it would have to apply for EU membership from scratch. And that process, well, it's not automatic. It could be long, complicated, and there's no guarantee of success. You'd need approval from all existing members, including Spain, funnily enough. The prospect of being outside the EU is a big deal.
A very significant potential downside. Okay, so let's try and pull these different threads together then. We've got the election shift, the ongoing legal constraints, the changing political deals, the firm international view. What's the most likely path forward look like?
Well, synthesizing all the information we've looked at, the most probable trajectory seems to be Catalonia pushing for and potentially getting more autonomy within Spain rather than achieving full independence anytime soon. The momentum just doesn't seem to be there for a complete break right now.
And the main reasons driving that assessment?
Two big things, really. First, that clear decline in popular support for outright separation we saw in the polls and elections. Second, you have a Spanish government that, while absolutely firm against independence, has shown some willingness to talk, to make concessions like those pardons, maybe finding common ground elsewhere.
So the era of confrontation of unilateral moves might be fading somewhat.
The analysis certainly suggests that. One source puts it as a negotiated settlement focusing on fiscal and political autonomy is more likely than a unilateral declaration of independence. The energy seems to be shifting towards finding a workable arrangement within the current system.
But it's not like it's all resolved and tied up with a bow, is it? Still feels quite uncertain. Oh, absolutely not resolve. The sources are clear. The situation remains fluid. What happens next really hangs on those ongoing political talks between Barcelona and Madrid, which way public opinion swings next, and crucially, how Spanish courts continue to interpret the Constitution. It's still very much in play.
Right. So, summing up, the definite political shift in Catalonia away from a pro-independence majority. Legal barriers to secession remain solid. Alliances are in flux. The world outside largely backs Spain's unity. And all this seems to point towards seeking more self-government within Spain as the more likely outcome than independence itself.
That nails the key insights from our deep dive, I think. It really shows how political will, legal reality, public mood, how they all interact in this very complex, long-running situation.
And hopefully for you listening, this gives you a solid, current understanding of what's happening with a really important issue in Europe. It's a story with deep roots, and this latest chapter is definitely one to watch. And maybe it leaves you with a question to mull over. If the trend is towards more autonomy rather than independence, what specific kinds of autonomy, maybe around taxes, language policy, infrastructure, might actually be negotiable and broadly acceptable, both in Catalonia and to the Spanish government? And what are the biggest hurdles likely to be in actually hammering out those kinds of deals?